Hi and welcome to my final video where I'll be talking about the pressures and the opportunities of doing a PhD in New Zealand. So as I mentioned in one of my earlier videos, as a PhD student here at Waikato you're under pressure relatively quickly because after 6 months you get evaluated and your project gets evaluated, and that involves a literature review, also providing a full plan of what you intend to do during your PhD and a timeline for your PhD, and also any ethical considerations you may have. You also have to give a 20-minute presentation to a panel who decide how viable your PhD is. Once you've passed your initial evaluation, you still get evaluated every 6 months, but the pressure isn't quite so great because you're normally too busy doing other things, for one, and also it just involves filling in a form online. Your supervisor decides whether you've progressed well in the past 6 months, and you also provide in that form details of what you're going to do over the next 6 months as well. Once this has been evaluated by the panel again, they say yes or no, or give you amendments on how to progress and go forward in the next 6 months. The obvious pressure when doing a PhD is that of the thesis, and at Waikato the limit is 100,000 words for a thesis, and this will be submitted at the end of my 3 years obviously, and it will be assessed by one academic from New Zealand and one from overseas. If that submission is successful and it's accepted, then I'll then have to give an oral presentation or a Viva, and I don't think that differs much from the system in the UK. So I should also talk a little bit about funding. Funding is something that I've never really had to worry about at Waikato. The funding for my PhD was already in place because my supervisor had received a grant from the Marsden Fund, which is, had received the Marsden Fund from the Royal Society of New Zealand, so that pays for my stipend and it pays my whole PhD project as well. It's a pretty well funded project, and obviously it's paid for my fieldwork, and it will pay for the use of various instruments in my lab work as well. And I know that funding has been in place for several other PhD students here, in fact many other PhD students here. Several of them are from the UK, and all of their projects seem to be pretty well funded, and they all have stipends, and they're all pretty happy. No one seems to be particularly worried about the funding on that side of things. If they find that their stipend isn't enough for their particular lifestyle, they can also teach and demonstrate as well and earn some extra money should they need it. In fact, they're actively encouraged to participate in demonstrating to the undergraduate students. And the other main pressure is that to publish. My supervisor and I are both aiming for me to publish 3 or 4 papers by the end of my PhD, so there's pressure from my supervisors in that sense, but there's also pressure on myself that I give to myself personally because I know how important it is to publish, and to publish in good journals at an early stage in my PhD, and this will also reinforce my dissertation and make it better and more robust when it's being assessed. So you might be wondering what I might intend to do after I've completed my PhD. Well, I think the main aim would be to get a postdoc, and I expect that that might be pretty difficult in New Zealand, partly because my PhD is pretty specialist and I don't expect that there will be many jobs available in that field in New Zealand, but I get the impression that jobs will be available particularly in places like China or North America or even Australia or maybe even the UK and Europe. So there are plenty of options out there for me to get a job. In New Zealand, I only sort of know about the scientific sector of jobs in New Zealand, and my understanding is that there are plenty of jobs in the agricultural sector here and in agricultural science as well, particularly in the Waikato region. But as I said, for people like me, it may be pretty likely that I'm going to have to leave New Zealand, and that's kind of exciting in its own way to see where I might end up next. And finally, I want to say thank you for watching my PhD video blog. I hope it was useful or at least mildly interesting, and I also want to say thanks to jobs.ac.uk for asking me to be involved. So thanks.